Qatar's Prime Minister Mohammed bin Jassim Al Thani arrives in Lebanon for talks with Lebanese leaders. Lebanon files a formal complaint to the UN Security Council accusing Israel of violating Resolution 1701 and the ceasefire agreement. And Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa announces the Committee to Manage Gaza's Affairs, emphasizing national unity. It's 8 p.m. Cairo local time and you're now watching Q News. We begin this bulletin with the latest developments in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
الوضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Qatar's Prime Minister Mohammed bin Jassim Al Thani has arrived in Lebanon for an official visit. He was received at Beirut's Rafi Al Hariri International Airport by Lebanese caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati. During his visit, Al Thani is scheduled to hold talks with senior Lebanese officials, including President Joseph Aoun at the Babda Palace. Lebanon's Speaker of Parliament Nabih Berri met with Slovenia's Deputy Prime Minister Tanja Fajon in Ain al-Tine to discuss political and security developments in Lebanon and the wider region. The meeting also covered bilateral relations between Lebanon and Slovenia, as both countries seek to enhance diplomatic and economic ties. The Lebanese army has begun deploying troops in the town of Taibe in southern Lebanon following the withdrawal of Israeli occupation forces. Local Lebanese media reported that Taibe's municipality has called on residents to cooperate with the army in efforts to clear the town of remnants of Israeli aggression and restore normal life. Lebanese Foreign Ministry has filed a formal complaint to the UN Security Council, citing Israel's violations of Resolution 1701 and the ceasefire agreement. The complaint highlighted ongoing Israeli air and ground attacks, casualties among civilians and Lebanese army personnel, and the abducting of the Lebanese civilians. Lebanon condemned Israel's removal of the blue line markers and urged the Security Council to hold Israel accountable while calling for increased support for the Lebanese army and UNIFIL forces. Lebanese media reported that the Israeli army has started establishing new surveillance positions on mountainous hills within the occupied Palestinian territories, ensuring monitoring of towns along the border. The Lebanese media indicated that Israel will set up 6 positions, and the Israeli army has completed preparations for the first site in Shlomi. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stated that Israel plans to stay after its incursions into Lebanon and Syria. During his participation in the 14th Middle East Conference of the Valdai Discussion Club, Lavrov clarified that Israel is determined to remain in Lebanese territory. noting that it plans to continue its advance without implementing any decisions related to withdrawal or ceasefire. And for more analysis on this story, we now move to Rana in our newsroom. Rana.
Thank you very much, Hani. And for further analysis on the recent developments regarding Lebanon, we're joined from Cairo by the managing editor of Al Ahram newspaper, Mr. Ashraf Al Ashri. A very warm welcome, sir, to Qnews. And we start off with asking you, what are the key objectives of Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed bin Jassim Al Thani's visit to Lebanon? And what role does Qatar play in Lebanon's political and economic stability, sir?
Greetings to you and the esteemed viewers. Certainly the visit of the Prime Minister Mohammed Abdurrahman of Qatar would contribute to the possibility of Qatar's role in the details of this landscape in Lebanon. Following the choice of the President of the country and the assigned Salam to the cabinet through the consultations of the Lebanese blocks in Lebanon. Qatar had a great role in choosing Naunan within 5 years that was consensus in Al Doha. But now the matter has changed in the southern of Lebanon. Following the last war by Hezbollah, there are several hinders that Lebanon is facing, and would require support of all the brotherly Arab supporters, and Qatar plays in this very important time with its brotherly Arabs. So they try to send an assuring message for the Lebanese powers that we will play in the participation to convince all the parties in forming a new government, and we have a great desire in Qatar to contribute the reconstruction of the southern of Lebanon, as announced the Foreign Minister of Qatar in Beirut, that Qatar will contribute to the large population in the south by supporting all the support in Lebanon following the stability to be held, and will discuss the Israeli violations in the southern Lebanon that has been taking place throughout the past few weeks.
Sir, how significant is Speaker Nabih Berri's meeting with Slovenia's Deputy Prime Minister, and what does it signal about Lebanon's diplomatic outreach in Europe, sir?
Certainly, Syria is in a very Syria would require in that time to have an agreed consensus of lifting the sanction that led to the weakening of the Syrian economy. The country is crippled since the fall of al-Assad, since the international and UN sanctions were imposed. The new administration of Syria, as the al-Shara, along with his foreign minister, pursue to the international demands and the Arab, as well as the Arab throughout the country, to have to provide an international back support to lift the economic sanctions. But I think that this demand is facing some obstacles. There could be like in a very limited course from Europe to lift these sanctions, but as the Western and international community would say that it is harder to lift it completely unless we have an inclusion of all the Syrian, certainly to have them assured that Syria is in a tried track, and the lack of the terrorist groups and not to threat the interest of the West by the existence of Iran and its militias that would rely on the roadmap drawn by Ahmed al-Shara that need to be implemented by the Convention of International Conference of the National Reconciliation and the forming of a government that would include all the spectrum. So everyone is waiting steps on the ground in order to lift the sanctions and give the full support in Syria.
Sir, with the Lebanese army now deployed in Taiba following Israelis' withdrawal, what challenges does the army face in securing the region and restoring stability?
I think it is a final opportunity for the Israeli forces to be withdrawn in the 18th of February, following the American intervention by convincing Israeli Lebanese partners to keep the Israeli in fixed areas in the southern of Lebanon. And after Israel have already passed the deadline of to be taken place in the 26th of the last month.
Sir, how serious, sir, Lebanon's accusations against Israel at the UN Security Council regarding violations of Resolution 1701, and what are the potential diplomatic and legal consequences for Israel, sir?
Several violations took place in the past 70 days. Lebanon said that around 1,300 and 500 violations by Israelis that increased following the inauguration of Trump. They claiming that there is a political incubate inside, and the Lebanese army said that the Hezbollah still have arms. But I think that the UN Security Council will issue a statement to condemn all these violations, and I hope we have an ability to take a resolution against Israel and to provide the conditions and sanctions and in order to have the 18th of February for the Israeli forces to withdraw, and the assignment of the Lebanese government and the army to prevent the Hezbollah in the Al-Litani and to have the ability to control the matters militarily. And then we'll have an abidement of the implementation of the 1701 resolution.
Sir, can't thank you enough for your informative and, of course, intellectual insights. That was the managing editor of Al-Ahram newspaper, Mr. Ashraf Al-Ashri. Thank you very much for joining us here on Qnews. And now we go back to Hani. Hani?
Thank you, Rana. Ladies and gentlemen, now we follow up on the latest details in Gaza. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa has announced the formation of a committee to manage Gaza's affairs, underscoring national unity. Mustafa emphasized efforts to accelerate humanitarian aid, reopen roads and prepare for reconstruction. He highlighted ongoing support for displaced people and services in Gaza despite 15 months of war. Regarding the West Bank, he condemned escalating Israeli crimes and announced diplomatic actions, emergency aid for displaced Palestinians, and renewed international efforts to expose Israeli violations and secure justice.
A crucial chance to act decisively.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has stated that the Gaza ceasefire deal has allowed Hamas to rebuild and restore its forces. Speaking at the closing ceremony of the Al-Aqsa Storm and Gaza Realities and Narrative conference, Araghchi said the resistance had survived a difficult period and claimed that Israel was forced to negotiate the release of hostages despite months of warfare in Gaza. His remarks came as U.S. President Donald Trump was set to sign a presidential memorandum reinstating his maximum pressure campaign on Iran. UNRWA has reported its financial situation has worsened in recent months, with expectations for further deterioration even before the U.S. President Donald Trump's expected decision to continue suspending funding. UNRWA spokesperson Juliette Tuma stated they will comment on the executive order once it is issued. Trump plans to stop future funding for the UN agency operating in Gaza and the West Bank, worsening the already dire financial conditions. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has revealed that Israel has plans for full control over the occupied West Bank. Speaking at the 14th Valdai Middle East Conference in Moscow, Lavrov emphasized the priority of establishing a Palestinian state based on international resolutions. He highlighted Gaza's devastating death toll of 46,000, surpassing Ukraine's conflict fatalities. Lavrov also acknowledged challenges in the Gaza ceasefire's second phase and reaffirmed the occupied Golan Heights as Syrian territory. The Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has condemned Israeli crimes targeting civilians, properties and infrastructure in the northern West Bank camps and villages, particularly in Jenin, Tulkarm, Tubas, Al-Far'a and Tamun. The ministry highlighted forced displacement, home demolitions and violations of international law aimed at expanding Israeli settlements. It called on the international community to break its silence, hold Israel accountable and stop systematic aggression threatening Palestinian existence while affirming Palestinian steadfastness in their homeland. The Jenin Governorate has announced that 38 Palestinians have been killed since the Israeli aggression against the West Bank began, with the Israeli occupation continuing to demolish homes and use drones to drop grenades. Israeli occupation forces are also inspecting vehicles and tightening restrictions on citizens. Dozens of homes and streets in the Jenin refugee camp have been destroyed. The Israeli military aggression has entered the 15th day, with further reinforcements sent through the Hajiz al-Jalma checkpoint to resume the ongoing escalation. Israeli drones have attacked two open areas in Tamun, south of Tubas, as the Israeli occupation's aggression continues against the town of Al-Far'a camp for the third day. Ambulances responded, but no injuries were reported. The Israeli occupation forces are conducting widespread raids, arrests and destruction of infrastructure, closing all entrances to Tamun and deploying reinforcements. The siege on Al-Far'a camp persists, with significant damage to water and electricity lines. The West Bank's Tulkarm Governorate has reported that Israeli forces displaced around 10,000 Palestinians from a refugee camp. They added in their statement that the Israeli occupation forces turned homes and buildings in the city and camp into military posts and sniper positions. The siege on Thabit and Al-Isra hospitals continues. The Israeli army arrested Red Crescent workers and raided the hospitals, interrogating an injured person. Since January 21st, Israel has expanded its military operations, resulting in the deaths of about 30 Palestinians in Tulkarm. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's Washington visit marks a critical juncture in U.S.-Israel relations amid regional challenges,
with substantial implications for the Middle East. His meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump comes amid critical regional challenges, including fragile ceasefire agreements in Gaza and Lebanon, as well as concerns over Iran's nuclear program. The discussions focused on the truce between Israel and Hamas, brokered by Egypt, Qatar, and the U.S. to halt hostilities, conduct a detainee exchange, and allow humanitarian aid into Gaza. However, President Trump has expressed doubts about the ceasefire's durability, stating there are no guarantees it will hold. Netanyahu, meanwhile, faces internal pressure from members of his governing coalition, who are divided between maintaining the ceasefire and resuming hostilities in Gaza. These talks could either strengthen the truce or expose ongoing barriers to regional stability and integration. International reactions to the visit are mixed. Arab nations have voiced apprehension, particularly about potential U.S.-Israeli proposals that could further complicate the Palestinian cause. Meanwhile, Netanyahu's visit serves domestic purposes. Facing a corruption trial in internal divisions, the trip allows him to showcase strong ties with the U.S. and secure further American support. But critics argue it may distract from pressing internal matters in Israel and jeopardize any chances for launching a serious peace process in the region. Ultimately, Netanyahu's visit is pivotal, with outcomes likely to influence U.S.-Israel ties and how they will reflect on efforts to maintain de-escalation and regional stability.
The Palestinian Foreign Ministry has condemned mass displacement operations carried out by Israeli forces, reporting that 20 families in Tubas and 15,000 residents in Jenin have been forced to flee their homes. The ministry warned that forced displacement tactics, including the destruction of Palestinian homes, are part of a wider strategy, and criticized the lack of international action, which it says emboldens Israel to escalate crimes against Palestinians. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the Jordanian King Abdullah II discussed the importance of fully implementing the Gaza ceasefire agreement and the urgent need for the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. Presidential spokesperson, Councillor Mohammed al-Shinnawi, stated that the leaders' call addressed developments in Syria, where they emphasized the importance of achieving stability in Syria, preserving its unity, territorial integrity, and the security of its people. They also stressed on the need to initiate an inclusive political process that does not exclude any party. The Egyptian and Turkish foreign ministers have celebrated 100 years of diplomatic ties, targeting $15 billion in trade and stronger economic cooperation. In a joint statement, they welcomed Gaza ceasefire, urged international aid, rejected Palestinian displacement, and reaffirmed support for UNRWA and the two-state solution. The two ministers stressed Syria's unity, voluntary return of refugees, and combating terrorism, while supporting Somalia's and Libya's sovereignty. They voiced concern over Sudan's conflict and called for joint global efforts to eradicate terrorism. Jordan's Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi has hoped the ceasefire in Gaza leads to lasting peace. Speaking alongside his Greek counterpart, George Ierapetiritis, Safadi emphasized the priority of delivering aid to Gaza and reinforcing the ceasefire. He reiterated Jordan's commitment to working with the U.S. for a just peace based on a two-state solution. Ierapetiritis highlighted Gaza's reconstruction and reaffirmed Jordan's role as a stabilizing and essential regional partner. These are all the news we have for now, but here's a reminder of today's main stories. Qatar's Prime Minister Mohammed bin Jassim Al Thani arrives in Lebanon for talks with Lebanese leaders. Lebanon files a formal complaint to the UN Security Council, accusing Israel of violating Resolution 1701 and the ceasefire agreement. And Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa announces a committee to manage Gaza's affairs, emphasizing national unity. This concludes our news bulletin for now, but please don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at QNewsEGY to stay informed. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.